Good afternoon. This is Wendy Lieber, co-founder of Content Bacon. I have the pleasure of being with Brian Kanan from DocFox. DocFox is a software as a service platform for financial institutions, banks, credit unions that really help streamline the documentation process, the big headache that many institutions face for compliance and other issues. These guys have come up with the magic bullet, the secret solution to make it easier, make it more cost effective, and make it more accurate. And Ryan, you can add on anything to that I missed, but say hello.
Cool. Hi, everybody. My name's Ryan. And yeah, DocFox's focus has always been in compliance, right? And in terms of anti-money laundering and all the complexity that comes with that. And in particular, in terms of onboarding and taking on accounts and managing compliance on an ongoing basis for business accounts. And one of the biggest challenges is that right now we're sitting in a world where you're not meeting with clients face to face. And suddenly you can't, especially if you think about community banks, credit unions, where so much of their world and relationship is about interpersonal relationships, one-on-one, getting to meet and, talk and engage. Suddenly that's kind of just been ripped away, right? And so that's the kind of space that we're finding ourselves in right now.
Wow. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more, like what's happening with your business, what's happening with your clients. Is demand for what you do going up? Because it seems like there's a lot more banking activity right now with people trying to take advantage of all different types of loans and, government funding. Give us a snapshot of what's happening.
Yeah, sure. So I think that, in terms of our existing clients, well, first of all, our business has always been kind of virtual able. And so virtual ready. We've always had a kind of robust work from home policy. And so we've set up our network infrastructure and our security such that people can work remotely. We have a lot of travel. We have a lot of, people distributed around the world. And so for us to go totally virtual outside of our offices wasn't a huge step for us. In terms of our clients, our clients that were using us, because DocFox is a software as a service tool, it really enables remote work. So our existing clients, I think are appreciative of the system that they've got. And so for them, it's kind of business as usual. We saw a bit of a drop kind of as companies tried to kind of figure out what they were doing and moved remote in terms of usage. But now we're back up to about 80% usage in terms of volumes that we saw kind of pre-corona lockdown. So from that perspective, I think we've seen, our clients really getting value from it. As far as, new sales and kind of engaging with new customers, we saw a bit of a pause while there was uncertainty. And then since then, we've seen a number of kind of, institutions we were talking to come back to us to say, hey, can we reignite that conversation? Because now that we're working remotely, we're realizing that we don't have insight. Like we need a tool to be able to coordinate how we onboard our clients in a non-face-to-face world. Like how do we deal with the risk that we're not seeing these businesses face-to-face? How do we deal with the fact that 3 people who would usually be sitting in the same room, performing due diligence and compliance are now sitting far apart? Like how do we ensure that our policies are being taken care of? And in particular now, with the SBA loans, how do we handle all the volume? So what you're basically finding is, you've got these SBA loans that are now going out. Every business typically is applying for these things. And the main organizations now by volume that are the ones handling this are all the smaller credit unions and smaller community banks. But they're having to deal with their fixed capacity where they would never be having, every single one of their business clients and, new clients trying to get loans suddenly and set up accounts, get and follow the process. And they're having to do that all while having to deal with uncertainty in the process from the SBA. So there's so much kind of uncertainty, and at the same time, there's huge operational constraints because the team now is having to work remotely when they're usually not able to or used to. And on top of that, their volumes of what they're having to deal with has just trebled or quadrupled.
Yeah, that's amazing. So with, current clients, and I guess even because what you're talking about, it sounds like, just lots of complexity, working differently than you ever worked before, all these new loans that are coming out where a lot of the guidance for them is kind of coming out in real time, yet customers are like, wanting information. What are some of the questions that your clients are asking you, or you wish they'd be asking you? And what are some of the ways, that you're able to support them during this extremely complex time?
Well, I think typically the questions I think are divided into two kind of schools. So the one is to do with how do we better facilitate these loans, which is like just how do we deal with that complexity, and in particular, it's a volume question. Which is how do we do it more efficiently? Because at the end of the day, the victim of inefficient processing here is the business that desperately needs the cash flow and that desperately needs the certainty or assurance that they're going to be able to get that loan. So that's the first piece, and the banks and credit unions are all acutely aware of that, right? And so, I mean, you're talking about incredibly community conscious organizations who deeply care for their members and their clients. And so really what I'm hearing from these banks and credit unions is, how do we just process this more effectively? How do we deal with this in terms from an efficiency standpoint? I think that the other side of questions, because not every credit union or bank is offering SBA loans, is how do we just operate effectively now in a world that's non-face-to-face? And so how do we take on, clients that are now needing just regular loans, or that are going through just regular banking needs when we can't see them face-to-face, when we never ever had an ability to do that before. Everything was come into a branch, but now, and certainly for the medium term, we're just not going to be able to do that. So how do we cater to this world of non-face-to-face? And so I think, for me, the kinds of discussions we're having with clients is to really, kind of go through the process of saying, all right, well, first we need to break down a risk assessment to say, well, what are the risks that are actually, what are the risks that are present here? How do we make sure that we can identify a thoughtful kind of risk process that's based on your particular client base or membership base? And how do we then ensure that we can put systems in place to make sure that whatever we create from a policy side of it is actually adhered to and stuck to across a distributed team, where they're typically the biggest challenge can be lack of availability and visibility of data and client information. So how do we centralize that all and make sure we put controls in place so that you can best service your client base, but actually that it puts you in a far better position coming out of this?
Right.
Because suddenly you're that much more efficient, you're centralized and digital, you've got far better controls. It almost forces clients to move away from a paper-based world. And it means you're giving a really great experience, right, in terms of online account opening, for business accounts, which is pretty rare these days. And so, for me, if there's any kind of silver lining out of this, I think we're going to see, a huge amount of efficiency gains, just because institutions are forced to do it, right? But I think it means for it, and all those savings and benefits can be passed back onto the client, which I think is, which is great.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So speaking of new opportunities and silver linings, then, if institutions that aren't currently working with you, but now obviously see the need, like, hey, we need something to help us with this, what is it like to engage with you and onboard a new client now in the midst of this? Like, what does that look like to a potential client?
So I think it really depends on the need and how urgent it is. So, we've had some institutions call us and say, hey, like, things are burning, we need, help now. And we can get them live in 2 days' time, right? So we can really turn around quickly in that kind of scenario, especially where it's a more standardized piece. It's like we need help collecting, documentation for the, for the payroll protection loans.
Yeah.
For example. Okay, great. Well, how soon do you need it? Well, if you need it done in 2 days, we'll make sure that we make it happen. If we want kind of a more thought through, designed program where we really need to kind of consider a bigger picture, typically then we see clients taking like 2 to 3 weeks in terms of getting set up from start to finish. But we're really trying to be flexible to help out, all of the banks and credit unions to just see, what they need, and to be able to really kind of help them out in the moment.
Absolutely. So you mentioned how DocFox has already been kind of a virtual ready organization. Tell us more about, what's been the impact on you, your team. What are some new practices perhaps you've adopted? What changes, good and bad, have you seen as a result of the coronavirus?
So I think the main, as I said, it hasn't really impacted our operations much. So from a kind of day-to-day working level, some people have actually said they're more productive than when they're at the office, which is interesting. I think the biggest thing has been that some of the team, might suffer from loneliness at times, and they're kind of like disconnect. So we've made sure that that hasn't happened as much. And the way that we do that is we anyway have a weekly meeting on a Friday, which follows a kind of standard format, which gives everyone an opportunity to share, a score for the week, a kind of a high and a low, any kind of challenges they might be dealing with, etc. But what we've now done is we now end that on a Friday with a social. So we have a company social, but we have a different person every week in charge of what basically happens during that social. So we typically do like games. And so, we had like a pretty detailed like strategy game that was played with everyone on Zoom, and almost like a mystery kind of game. We had another day where we did, just like Pictionary, I think it was, or charades, or so it's just about kind of having a little bit of a break, right? Where like for an hour, the company can kind of just enjoy each other, like we might, if it was the end of a day on a Friday, but getting to do that on Zoom in a kind of fun, different, more creative way.
No, that's awesome. So is there anything else you want current clients or prospects to know now about DocFox and what they can count on you for, and what they need to know to navigate these times?
I think the biggest thing for me is just to really consider how you can leverage technology to best protect the risks that come up because you're remote. So just there's so many things that you assume you can just continue in a remote fashion. But if you think about like BSA compliance and you think about now trying to do that remotely, I think that it's possible that there's so many things that can slip through the cracks. So I just think it's worthwhile considering what additional risks are you facing as an institution now that you're remote, in addition to how do you scale your efficiency so that you can handle increased volume with just far less capacity and ability to kind of deal with that in a team. And so, obviously we do this, and we've been doing this for many institutions. And so we're always happy to help in any way we can.
No, that's great. So tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So I think the best way is to go to our website or Google us. So our website is docfoxapp.com, or just to Google DocFox. That's DOCFOX, and reach out through our contact us request page.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan, for that information. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Wendy.